Hello and a warm welcome to all lovers of thought and philosophy.
Previously, we discussed John Locke and the philosophical school of empiricism. Today, we'll delve into the life and ideas of David Hume, an 18th century Scottish philosopher who brought empiricism to its peak. Like John Locke, David Hume believed that by the 17th century, rationalist philosophers had created a tangled web of theories and ideas. He argued that philosophers now needed to tidy up this mess and focus on grounding philosophy in human experience. To approach reality, he insisted, we must look at immediate human experiences of the world, for beyond these experiences, nothing real exists.
Hume was known for his uncompromising rationality. He claimed, I only accept what I can perceive through my senses, everything else I subject to doubt. For Hume, organizing our thoughts and beliefs required a clear standard. When we read something, it must either present logical reasoning or empirical evidence. If it offers neither, it is mere illusion or sophistry, and the book should be discarded. Since the human mind can imagine things that are not real, Hume emphasized the importance of not mistaking imagination for reality. According to Hume, humans have two types of perceptions, impressions and ideas. Impressions are our immediate sensory experiences, while ideas are the memories or reflections of those experiences. For example, if a child touches fire and gets burned, the burning sensation is an impression. From that moment on, whenever the child sees fire, they recall the memory of being burned and avoid touching it. This memory is an idea derived from a real experience. In this example, both the impression and the idea are valid, though the idea is less vivid than the original experience. However, as we'll see, Hume's philosophy shows that things are not always this straightforward. Our imaginations are not always simple. They can also create complex ideas. When we're sorting through our beliefs and theories, it's essential to be cautious of these complex ideas and question them. Let me give you an example. How do most people imagine an angel? Likely as a human figure with wings. Now, we've all seen human figures, and we've seen wings. Both are real experiences. But an angel is a complex idea, combining two separate experiences that have no real connection in nature. Here, the human mind blends two independent realities into one imaginative creation. While we've experienced the individual components, no one has ever seen an angel in reality. Therefore, it's wise to exclude such a complex idea from our belief system.
Hume believed we should apply this approach to any complex idea that has no equivalent in the real world. Like angels, mythical creatures such as the phoenix, unicorns, or other fantastical beings are all products of the human mind. Though our minds don't create ideas out of nothing, they can combine different experiences to form imaginary constructs. Hume advises that for every belief you hold, ask yourself, is my belief based on a simple idea or a complex one? And does it come from a real experience? Or is it the product of imagination? If your belief comes from a complex idea built by combining separate experiences, you should doubt it, as that combination might lead you to a false or unreal belief. Take, for example, the concept of heaven. Our idea of heaven is a complex idea made up of gardens, golden gates, rivers of wine, heavenly beings, and angels serving the blessed on golden trays. Interestingly, even within this idea of heaven, the angels and rivers of wine are themselves complex ideas, layered into an even more elaborate complex belief. Here, we must pause and ask ourselves, has humanity truly experienced such a place? Or has the mind simply used its scissors and glue to combine unrelated, independent experiences into a single image and convinced itself that this complex idea is real? If it's the latter, that belief isn't justified. It's clear that humans are incredibly powerful when it comes to imagination. The human mind functions like a workshop where simple experiences are cut and glued together to create unreal phenomena. While surrealism is exciting and valuable in the realm of art, showcasing the creativity of the artist, this imaginative power becomes problematic when someone confuses their mental constructs with reality. In fact, this is essentially the definition of schizophrenia. To get closer to reality, we must test our beliefs and ideas against real experience and draw a firm line through our illusions.
Now let's explore Hume's view on religion. From his perspective, religion belongs to the realm of faith and belief, not reason and knowledge. It's famously said that the final link between faith and knowledge was broken with Hume's philosophy. But interestingly, Hume wasn't a strict atheist. He stated, "I do not believe in God because I've never experienced him, but neither am I certain that the statement God does not exist is true." This statement from a great empiricist philosopher might seem surprising, but what's even more intriguing is that Hume didn't limit this uncertainty to the question of God's existence. In fact, Hume fundamentally challenged the idea of being absolutely certain about any statement. He argued, we must not confuse our beliefs with certainty. For example, he said, "I believe in gravity, but I cannot be certain that the statement's gravity will always exist is true. I believe in causality, but I cannot be certain that every effect has a cause is universally valid." Things are getting a bit more complex here, so let me explain this part more carefully. I encourage you to follow along with focus, as it's crucial to understanding Hume's reasoning. Hume accepted mathematical and logical principles as certain. Why? First, because these principles are not subject to time, and second, because they are derived not through inductive reasoning, but through deductive reasoning. For instance, 2 plus 2 equals 4. If A is equal to B and B is equal to C, then A is equal to C. If A is greater than B and B is greater than C, then A is greater than C. According to Hume, humans don't need repeated experience to accept these truths. They can be accepted with certainty, even without direct experience. However, Hume believed that most of the realities we deal with in the world are 1. Subject to time, meaning they exist within a temporal framework. 2. Accepted through inductive reasoning, meaning they are conclusions drawn from repeated experiences. As a result, while our beliefs about these realities may be justified, they can never be absolutely certain. For example, I believe that the sun will rise tomorrow morning. Why? Because every day since I was born, the sun has risen without fail. My belief is justified, but I cannot be certain because I haven't yet experienced tomorrow. If there's even a 1 in a billion chance that the sun might not rise tomorrow, then the reality of its rising is not an absolute certainty.
Now, let's return to the question of God's existence. Hume did not believe in God because, as he said, "I have never experienced God in reality." The likelihood of having such an experience may be extremely close to zero, but it is not zero. Hume went on to explain, "If I were to live forever and had infinite opportunities to observe and experience that God does not exist, only then could I say with certainty that God does not exist. But since I do not have such a possibility, although I am an atheist, I cannot claim to know with certainty that God does not exist." Let's see what he says about gravity. He says, "I believe gravity exists, but I am not certain that gravity always exists." This uncertainty has two reasons. The first reason is similar to the previous example. Hume says, if a person believes that a stone will fall to the ground when dropped, it is because they have observed this phenomenon so many times and repeated the experience so often that they accept it as a fact. This belief is justified. But can anyone experience that the stone will always fall to the ground? No, because humans cannot experience always. So Hume says, Belief in the existence of gravity is justified, but the statement, "I know that gravity always exists," is not acceptable to me. The second reason is different. Hume argues that a person does not directly experience gravity itself. What we experience is that an object falls to the ground when released. From this experience, we imagine something called gravity. Hume says, we experience the stone falling to the ground, not gravity itself. Saying, "I know the stone will fall to the ground if I release it," is one thing, but saying, "I know gravity exists," is another. Because if I want to make further conclusions from this belief, I must be very careful not to fall into a fallacy and forget that I have experienced the stone falling, and that gravity is just a mental concept and belief.
Let me give another example to make this clearer. Hume says, "I believe in the law of causality, but I am not certain that the law of causality exists." Again, he provides two reasons. Suppose a ball collides with another ball. What we experience is that a moving ball hits a stationary ball, and at the same moment, the stationary ball starts moving. Then we imagine a causal relationship in our minds, but we haven't directly experienced causality. What we actually experienced was that one event followed another. We haven't experienced that the movement of the second ball was necessarily caused by the first ball hitting it. We have only created this conclusion in our minds. Now, can we be absolutely sure about the causal relationship between these two phenomena? Hume does not say we should stop believing in causality. On the contrary, we do believe in it, and our belief is justified. But we should not ignore another possibility, such as the chance that 1 in 100 or even 1 in 1,000, the reason for the second ball's movement at that moment might have been something else. The problem is that when we forget that we have never directly experienced the law of causality and have instead constructed it in our minds from other experiences, we may reach incorrect beliefs without being cautious. Personally, after reading Hume's philosophy, I've come to the conclusion that we often look at the world with preconceptions and think about it with biases. Perhaps the best philosophers are children. Children experience the world without preconceptions because they haven't yet been caught up in the habits and beliefs they'll form as they grow. Of course, as they grow older, they will gradually begin to mistake their beliefs for certainty. For example, if I return to the ball collision example, if the first ball hits the second ball and yet the second ball remains still, both you and I would be very surprised. But a child who doesn't have preconceptions about the laws of nature would not be surprised at all. For the child, nature is neither rational nor irrational. The child is simply experiencing nature as it is, moment by moment.
The expectation that one phenomenon follows another is not a property of the phenomena themselves, but rather a mental belief we hold. These beliefs may be justified, but Hume says we shouldn't confuse them with certainty. And even when these beliefs are justified, many times they are not. We experience phenomena that happen one after another, and in our minds, we connect them. We imagine relationships that we haven't actually experienced. We have only imagined them. We rush to turn these imaginings into beliefs and then into certainties, even though they may be wrong and merely fantasies or unreal. A belief that comes from unrealistic daydreaming becomes illusion and superstition. For example, if someone sees a flock of black horses and says, "I know all horses are black," we would ask, "Have you seen all horses?" You shouldn't even say, "I'm certain that all crows are black." Have you been everywhere at all times and seen every crow in the world? So why claim certainty about something you have never experienced? Now, if you say, "I believe all crows are black," there's no problem. Your belief is justified because your experiences so far have shown this to be true. But from Hume's perspective, you cannot logically rule out the possibility of white crows. Here's another example. Until about 300 to 400 years ago, People thought there was a causal relationship between thunder and lightning. They believed thunder was the effect of lightning because it always followed it. Eventually, they discovered that thunder and lightning actually occur at the same time and are not causally related. Rather, both are effects of something else called electricity. The timing of events doesn't necessarily mean there's a causal relationship between them. Bertrand Russell gives a very clear example. He says, "There was a chick that every time the farmer's wife came, she would feed it and give it water. This happened every day, so the chick believed there was a causal connection between its happiness and the woman's visits." If that chick had known Hume's philosophy, it would have realized that its belief was based on inductive experiences and shouldn't be confused with certainty. One day, the farmer's wife came, but instead of feeding it, she broke its neck, plucked its feathers, and roasted it on the fire.
Hume's philosophy teaches us not to rush to conclusions, because this haste can lead to mistakes, illusions, and superstitions. Who knows? Maybe a person hundreds of years ago stepped outside, saw a black cat, and then later fell and broke their arm. They might have connected these two independent experiences in their mind and told others about it. If every day each person passed this wrong belief to just 2 other people within a month, over 1 billion people could believe that seeing a black cat causes bad luck. Conspiracy theories spread in much the same way, and especially today, through social media, they spread like wildfire among people. This is why pharmaceutical laboratories are very cautious when determining causality between a drug and treatment. To test a new drug, they divide patients into 2 groups. One group receives the real drug, and the other receives a placebo, a fake, ineffective drug. Neither group knows which one they are in. Then they observe the recovery rates in both groups. If 80% of the first group improves and only 20% of the second group improves, they can believe the drug is effective. However, if both groups show a 50% recovery rate, this means the drug was not effective, and there was no real causal relationship between the drug and the treatment. I'll repeat it again because this point is very important. Just because one event follows another, it's not enough to prove a causal relationship between the 2 events. The last example I want to give in this regard is prayer. I pray for something, and if it happens after my prayer, I might imagine a causal connection in my mind and develop the false belief that by praying I can get what I want. A comedian shared a story about how, when he was a child, he would pray to God for his wishes. Almost half of his wishes were fulfilled, and half were not. Then, one day he watched The Godfather and became fascinated by Al Pacino's power and authority in the film. As a child, he decided to share his wishes with The Godfather and pray to Al Pacino. Once again, he found that half of his wishes came true and the other half did not. Eventually, he grew older and decided to stop praying altogether. He found that, again, half of his wishes were fulfilled and half were not. If this person hadn't moved beyond these mental experiences, he might have believed for the rest of his life that praying helped him get what he wanted.
Now, to finish this session, I want to share Hume's view on ethics. Interestingly, Hume believed that the root of ethics is not in logic. Before him, philosophers like John Locke and Socrates argued that our sense of right and wrong is inherent in human logic. But Hume believed that ethics comes from our feelings and emotions, not from reason or logic. For example, many Nazis, including their leader, who killed millions during World War II, didn't have a mental deficiency. In fact, most of them were very intelligent. From Hume's perspective, they had a deficiency in their emotions and feelings. Or take the case where, if we only focus on logic, we might argue that we shouldn't be sad about the deaths of elderly people from COVID around the world. After all, the Earth's population is too large, and it's harming nature. Also, the elderly impose a significant cost on societies. So why do we feel so sad and upset about their deaths? According to Hume, it's because of our emotions and feelings, not because of reason or logic. Just as Descartes' rationalist philosophy seemed extreme, Hume's empiricist philosophy may also seem extreme. I hope that in future videos we can talk about Kant's epistemology, which might offer a balance between Descartes' and Hume's philosophies.
Thank you all for your attention. Until next time, stay curious.